Hello and welcome to ICSE Computer Applications for Class 10, Programming in Java. Last week we had learned about creating methods. While creating methods, we learned about two things: creating methods and calling a method. When we create a method basically contains the method header and the method body. Method header contains a return type, name of the method, and arguments or parameters. Now what do these all do? The return type basically specifies the data type of the data returned by the method. Okay, and if it is not returning anything, it should be void. Name of the method is the name of the method. Arguments or parameters, these are the list of formal arguments passed, if any. So please remember, out of these three things, arguments or parameters are optional. You may or may not write the arguments or parameters. The other optional thing that is there in a method is actually the body. You may not write anything inside the body. Yes, the braces will be there, but you may not write something in the body. So what does the body specify? It specifies what this method is going to do when it is called. So when you call the method, the body contains the statements which are going to be executed. The next thing after creating a method, or which is called as creating a method definition, is actually the calling of the method. So you should also know about how to call a method. Today we will be doing two things. One is creating methods using examples and learn how to use them. And second is know when we should use a static method and when to use a non-static method. We will do this task using some examples. I'll be taking a few examples today and a few examples in the next sessions also, so don't worry, but we'll be doing it bit by bit. Okay, so the first method that we are going to write is called as isDivisible. Now this isDivisible function basically takes two ints as arguments, that is m and n as arguments, and displays whether m is divisible by n or not. I have focused on a few things which are supposed to be focused on. That is isDivisible, that is the name of the method, which is very, very important. It takes two arguments. The arguments are m and n, and both of them are of type int, and it displays whether m is divisible by n or not. So please remember, it's not returning anything, it displays whether m is divisible by n or not. Let me take some examples. If the values of m and n are 16 and 6, it should display false, because 16 is not divisible by 6. Similarly, 20 and 5, it should display true, because 20 is divisible by 5. And last one, 50 and 5, it should display true, because 50 is divisible by 5. Let us see how the structure of this function, of the functions that we are going to use, what is the structure going to be. Main function, you know how the structure is going to be. It is going to be public static void main function and the braces. Fine. Now how do we create the definition of the isDivisible function? We know that it is called as isDivisible, so we'll write isDivisible as the name of the function. Public static we should be writing, we have to write. Okay, I'll tell you later on when not to write any of these, but otherwise with every function you'll be writing public static. Fine. Why did we write void? Because this function, as you can see, is not returning anything. It is basically displaying something, so it's not returning anything, so it's going to be void here. And because it is taking two arguments, you will write the arguments names m and n and the two data types. Naturally you will write int m comma int n, not int m comma n. So please remember that in arguments, every variable, every argument should be preceded with a data type. Now how are we going to do these functions? How are we going to create these functions? Let's do it in BlueJ itself. Okay, we are in BlueJ right now. The structures of the definitions of the two functions is given here now. Okay, I hope it is very clear to you. I hope you understand why we have written void here. I hope you understand that every argument is supposed to precede it is supposed to have a data type along with it. Okay, how are we going to call this? First of all, we are going to call is divisible, and we'll write down 16 comma 6 like this. So that means the function, what the main function is going to call, it is going to call a function called is divisible, and it is going to pass two arguments, that is 16 and 6. Please remember 16 and 6 are basically the call. This is basically a call with actual arguments. Okay, so 16 and 6 are actual arguments, and what are m and n? M and n are formal arguments. So you should be very thorough with these names, because I will be taking these names later on also. Okay, now what is this function supposed to do? Now see, when we give this call is divisible 16 comma 6, 16 is going to be passed to m and 6 is going to be passed to n. So that means m now is going to be 16 and n is going to be 6. And now what am I going to do? I have already received the values of m and n. I just need to figure out whether m is divisible by n. How do I do that? I can use an if statement. Okay, so I can say if m is, when divided by n, gives a remainder of 0, what do I do now? If it gives a remainder of 0, it is going to display, as you know that it is going to display the value of true. Okay, it is going to display the value of true. Now otherwise what is going to happen? Otherwise, that means on the L side, what we'll do is we'll display a false. Okay, no double quotes please. These true and false are actually Boolean values. Okay, alright. Now see what is going to happen now. When the call is made, 16 goes to m, 6 goes to n. 16 when divided by n does not give a 0 as a remainder. So 6 2s are 12, it gives 4 as a remainder. So it's not true. So it will come to the L side and it will display false. Let us see the program and how and execute it. So let's compile it. Let's run the main function, and you see that it has given a false result. Let us see how things will happen if I give this call again with something which is divisible. Okay, let's say 16 comma say 4. 16 is divisible by 4. Okay, so what do you think is going to be displayed now? From the first call it is going to display false, and from the second call it is going to display true. So let us see how things happen now. It displays false and true. Okay, can you see the path that the program takes? When we run the program, we are running the main function. In the main function, it executes this call first, and when this call happens, the value of m and n are 16 and 6. The result is a false. It displays a false and returns to the main function again. Now it comes to 16 comma 4. 16 and 4 is passed. 16 is divisible by 4. It displays a true, doesn't come to the L side, and returns to the main function. And now there is nothing left in the main function. The main function also finishes. So it is over now. Okay, now I have made a small change in this function now. The function is the same, the arguments are the same, what it is supposed to do is the same, but what is different is now the program is returning a value. Okay, So it is returning true, otherwise it is returning false. That means if it is divisible, it returns true, otherwise it returns false. Now you can see from the examples below, 16 and 6 it returns false, and the last one 50 and 5 it returns true. Now how are things going to change now? First of all, because this program is now returning something now, we have written public static boolean, because it is returning a boolean value. Okay, because we already did that earlier. Otherwise the header remains the same, exactly the same. Now this becomes boolean. Second thing, earlier in the call we had written only this part. Now this part was only to make a call and that's it, because that previous function was not expected to return anything. I did not create a container to store something which is returned by it. Now because I expect it to return, I need a container. So what I have done is I have created a container called B, which is naturally a boolean container. Why? Because it needs to store a boolean value. So I have created a boolean variable B and I said is equal to so and so. So when the call is made, whatever it returns, it goes into the variable B. Okay, I hope that is clear to you. And after this B gets a value, B is actually displayed on the screen. Okay, let's come to this program again. Let me not worry about the second call. Let's worry about only one call. Okay, what do I need? I need to change this void to a boolean. I've changed it to boolean. Is it supposed to display something on the screen? It is not supposed to display anything on the screen. It is supposed to return it. So I'll say return true, semicolon. Is it supposed to display anything here? No. I'll again say return false here. Now because this function, this method is actually returning something, I need it to be stored into a variable. I'll create a variable boolean b is equal to is divisible so and so, and then I will write system dot out dot println b, that is the result of the call, is actually displayed here. Okay, now see the route taken now. When the call is made, the control of the program goes from here and comes to the function or the method being called. The value of 16 goes to m and the value of 6 goes to n. That remains the same as earlier also. M, and if m is divisible by n, it returns a true. That means now this function is now going to terminate itself. Why is it going to terminate? Because the control is going to be returned from here and it goes back into the function where it was called from. Okay, the moment a return statement is executed, it actually returns the control back to where it was called from, and if there is any data which is passed along with it, the data also goes. Okay, so if 16 and 6, is 16 divisible by 6? No. Does it return a true? No. What does it return? A false. So that means this call has now received a result of false, and that false is going to be stored in the variable b. Okay, and when it displays b, what does it display? It displays the value of false. Let us see how it will execute itself. I have compiled it. Let us execute it. It displays a false. Okay, now see how things actually happened. Same system as earlier, but the responsibility of displaying the result value is now with the main function, because main function has received the value back from the function, from the method. Okay, now I hope this is clear to you. Okay, let's see another way how we could display it, the resultant value. I could possibly call the function and display the result value in the same statement. Suppose I write it like this, what is going to happen? This is going to have the same result as the earlier one, but the only thing is, earlier we stored the result into a variable and displayed the variable. Right now we are displaying whatever it has returned. So we don't need to worry about storing anything. We can do this. I don't propose that you should be doing it in your programs, but I'm just telling you, you can do this. Okay. Alright, so if I compile this program and run this program, it is going to display the same thing as earlier. Okay. I hope there is no problem here. We know how to call a function, we know how to return values, we know how to display the returned value. Now my question to you is, can we write a return statement in a function which is actually a void function? So suppose this was a void function. This was a void function, and I put all the system.out.println on whatever here. Can I write a return statement inside this? Okay, let me forget about these now because they are going to give me errors. Can I write a return statement here? Okay, now I can write a return, only a return. I cannot say return 0 or return false or return true or return anything. I can just say return. That means in a function which is a void function, I can write a return statement. I can write a return statement. What is the return statement going to do? This is basically going to return the control back to the main function. Okay, back to the function from where it is called. That's it. It doesn't return any data. It is not expected to return any data. But what does it return? It actually returns the control. Okay, returns the control. Fine. My second question is, can a function have more than one return statements? Okay, we had it in our previous in the previous one. In fact, the one which was returning a boolean. So we had return false and return true. I had two return statements, but please remember, only one of the return statements would be executed. So suppose in this program also I write return somewhere, and then I write return somewhere. So what is going to happen now? Any of these return statements, when it executes, the control goes back. The other return statements they are not executed because the control doesn't reach them. Alright, and please remember, return statements, normally it is given at the end. If it is given in between, it is always conditional. So that means you always have to put it into a condition. Okay, now the question is when to use and when not to use static. Okay, you saw in the previous example when we created a function called isDivisible. Did we create the isDivisible function as static? Do you remember? We created it as static. Okay, so if a question is about creating a class with its instance variables and methods, then all those methods that you will be creating there would be non-static methods. That means you will not write static there. Okay, so there is nothing to be written there. Static will be removed. Now the second thing is, if a question is about performing a certain task like counting factors or finding factorial of a number, or the example that we just did, the example about isDivisible and so on, because it is actually performing a certain task, we will always use static methods. Okay, we will always use static methods. And the last thing is that the main function is always going to be static. You cannot create a main function as a non-static method. Okay. Please remember about static things. I don't know whether you've done in class 9, but if you have done or not, doesn't matter. We will be doing something about static maybe in the next session now. Okay. So today we learned more about function calls, return values, the different kinds of returning, that means returning in the value into a variable, or returning and displaying it directly, and all these things. And second is we learned when to use static and when not to use non-static. I hope today's session is clear to you. I hope you enjoyed this session. Thank you. We'll see you in the next session now.